Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak right here on Citizen TV. We continue looking at the issues behind the headlines. The big headline that we're looking at now is the fuel crisis. Fuel shortage that transpired yesterday in parts of Nairobi appears to have been remedied to some extent, although I do made to understand some filling stations are still experiencing a shortage of the commodity, and so you might still, as a motorist, experience a bit of a snarl up. But now we want to move the conversation further and look at the opportunities that probably we should be looking at. CS for Treasury, Henry Rotich, came back from China yesterday. He actually traveled back ahead of the president to probably try and resolve this issue. He had a meeting, a closed-door meeting with the parliamentary leadership yesterday. Now we're taking a look at some of the proposals that may have come from that meeting, including the reduction of VAT to 12%. How viable is such? How well, is it a proper remedy? Plus, this I've seen on the dailies, page 6 of the Standard, that another proposal, and the CS is said to have listed free maternal health care, free primary, free secondary education as some of the services the government could reconsider should the new tax measures be rejected. Now, we've talked about a lack of innovative ideas in as far as revenue collection is concerned. Are we saying that this government and Treasury has this simplistic approach to revenue collection, that it simply raise funds, raise taxes, or go out and borrow more money? That you're saying that now that they cannot be allowed to have this tax, they can do away with free primary education, free secondary education, and free maternal health care?
First of all, I don't think there has ever been free primary education in this country. Because parents still pay quite a lot in schools, and I don't think it was ever implemented as such. And secondly, you know, when we started mining oil, I thought if that was managed better, you know, Kenya would now be good to the world market also to market its products. Tourism has been affected, and it's one of the foreign earners, you know, agriculture, coffee, and many other sectors which could be bringing a lot of money to the country are not doing well. So I think we really need to become creative other than just looking into the pockets of Kenyans. We have a lot of other minerals to exploit. You know, we have coal in Kenya, we have a lot of precious stones, we have even gold, but no one is looking at what else can we exploit. Like many other countries which have serious earnings, such that the country itself has raised a lot of money for its people. In Kenya, it's the taxes. And I also want to say that Parliament we have to be careful that it doesn't become a rubber stamp in the system we have now. Haven't you,
are you not there already, that you're simply a rubber stamp? When it comes to budgetary allocations, you cannot even change a comma now.
Because you see, budget is a tool of the executive. And you have to balance between the executive, the judiciary, and the parliament. And out of those three branches, in fact, it is the judiciary which try to be, you know, very independent. And there has been a lot of interference with the judiciary. And you can see parliament is already interfered with. Because of the numbers, you can't do much unless the opposition is very strong inside the house, and you know, is a vote. So majority wins, you know, and what has passed in Parliament, and that's how Parliament passes law, and what passes through Parliament becomes the law, and the country follows. So this matter of VAT on oil products really has to be looked at, and we must look at other sources of making sure that the country does not sink further into debts and is able to run its budget.
Yes, from all the proposals that you've had, reduce the VAT to 12%, probably deny Kenyans things that they've been enjoying, free maternal health care, free secondary education, free primary. Do you think any of those is viable at this time? Do you think that is creative enough, innovative enough from the Treasury's perspective?
There is very little innovation and creativity. I'd be fair. I think it's fair to say that those are very lazy propositions that we're getting from the Treasury, because you can't even call those services free, because Kenyans are already paying income tax, and there's also the VAT tax that they're also paying, and other taxes. So we get what we deserve, and because we are paying for it. And number two, the economy is in distress because of good governance issues and fiscal discipline. And Kenyans tested the economy under the former, leadership of President Kibaki, and they know that it's doable to manage within the resources that we collect. And what President Uhuru Kenyatta needs to tell us are proper austerity measures, not generally listening to China and IMF on how we should run our economy, but really think on our feet and come up with austerity measures on what we need to do. A key question that we have to begin asking is, are we, because the issue of recurrent versus, development expenditure, even the threshold that they actually imposed, that 30 to 70%, we have still not met it in the current budget, because it's 24, 60 and some 15% to the county governments. And we need to begin asking questions. Are we overrepresented? Do we have a highly bloated wage bill and such things? Where are we spending our money most? And see to what extent do we need to curb that. Number two is the wastage. We have a lot of really high corruption in this country. We should not pay lip service to fighting corruption, but really see how do we recover money and seal those loopholes so that we not have money falling through the fingers and new hands dipping their fingers in the cookie jar, and making sure that whatever we're able to collect, we're able to invest in the economy and be able to deal with it. The Honorable Rotich at the Treasury is in trouble because if you look at the analysis of last month, I think it's July, the latest budget outturn, you realize that this gentleman borrowed 30 billion shillings for recurrent expenditure. Itself is against the Public Finance Management Act. Why Honorable Manzo's Parliament and ILE cannot be able to move such and ask such questions is perturbing to me. And what they are simply
I think we've already
telling
established
us,
that the National Assembly
what they're telling us is that
they are lindak. We shouldn't even look to them.
Actually, it's an indictment, not even just to Parliament. Kenyans have to think of, because the leadership is a reflection of society, is the current cohort of parliamentarians the best that we can get amongst us to deal with the issues that we have to as a country.
You served as a member of parliament in a very different time. The prevailing situation was totally different. The constitutional framework then was totally different. Do you think that this, and I know you empathize or even sympathize with them, but I feel like totally dismissing Parliament and their role on this matter, but do you think they still have a role to play in as far as getting innovative ideas is concerned? Because even the finance bill, where we should be looking at ways of proposals on how to raise the revenue to actually be able to conduct what has been proposed in the budgetary allocations or proposals, is still back to Parliament.
There is what we call participation or involvement of members of Parliament. You see, the level of involvement is different. You can involve me in a program by inviting me, allowing me to listen to you, and you tell me all that you want to do. There is also another way you can involve me by sharing my ideas with you and improving on your ideas so that something can be improved. But in this particular case, the members of Parliament are just involved as a matter of procedure, but they are not involved so that they can critique the budget process in a more effective way than is the case. Look at this issue, for example. Wastage in government is about 30%. This money they are trying to save is only 3%. Therefore, by improving just reducing wastage
by
10%, they would have covered more than 3 times what they are looking for in this budget. Number two, it's also almost a criminal for Rotich to go ahead and levy the duties before the president either ascends or has not ascended. Because if the president has moved either way, then Rotich would have had to move. And I want to correct my colleague. It's just a CS Rotich. He cannot be said to be honorable. Honorable is him, myself, and a few others. And number three, there is also the challenge that there are more innovative ways. One is there is that money that is said to be outside there. If they were to create an enabling environment internally and call in that money and give them some kind of tax holiday,
Proceeds of corruption or money?
There is money for corruption that has gone out because of corruption. There is also money that Kenyans are holding there, and we have not given them viable investments. So that they say, we are going back home, we are investing in this, we give them tax holiday, we give them some kind of relief for every money that comes in. That money would be more than enough. The third way of looking at this issue of the budget is not in terms of thinking of taxes. It is in terms of reducing areas that are not so imperative as far as we are concerned. For example, you cannot say that you want to remove maternal health care and all these other services. I was not in that meeting, but what I imagine, they are playing to the gallery. They want to make those of us who are opposed to tax
to be scared.
To be scared that, okay, members of the public will feel certain services will be taken away by government. The truth of the matter, that was a strategy meeting to how to deal with the onslaught that has bedeviled the government.
But it appears like CS Rotich is intent on ensuring that this taxation remains.
Yes.
Lowering it down to 12%, do you think that
is just going to save only 20 billion? But the effect of this taxation is actually as deep ramifications. The cost of food will go up. The cost of living is going to go up. And therefore the economy is going to shrink. And the economy shrinking by 1% is more damaging than even raising 200 billion through this kind of move.
Lazy, simplistic, those are the words we're using to describe the kind of innovative ideas that you're seeing in terms of budgetary processes, budgets and financing that budget. And this is a preserve of parliament. It should be. As a member of the National Assembly, would you sit here and actually accept that even your approach has been lazy and simplistic, just the way we're using, the same ones we're using to describe CS Rotich?
The unfortunate thing is currently the budget is a tool of the executive. So if the executive...
But not according to the Constitution.
Well, according to the Constitution, we should have a full control of budget. But I remember last time when we were making budget, our proposals, you know, and our negotiations with the Treasury were quite difficult. And we found that whatever came to Parliament, Parliament changed very little because Treasury insisted on its way. And you see, because of the numbers and in the House, you know, the budget passed with very little amendments and with the contributions from the floor of the House be almost of no value or of not having assisted, such that, you know, even budget can be made without Parliament. And in fact, there are those provisions that if Parliament doesn't cooperate, then the executive will still go on and have a budget for the country. So we need to strengthen Parliament, and we have a lot of experts in the area of finance and the area of law, such that we make sure that Parliament has its beat. And Kenyans have also got to support Parliament in that. It's a political process which, for now, leaves Parliament as a rubber stamp as far as the budget making is concerned.
And even also of concern should be the fact that the National Assembly, the best remedy they had for this issue of VAT was another postponement for 2 years. Do you think that is the kind of approach they should be having, that they postponed it twice before, and this time around they're seeing it's getting difficult, but okay, let's postpone it for 2 more years?
Obviously they're doing it as a populist, you know, decision, and you can see most MPs being on the floor from 2013 to 2015, and again recently when it was moved by a minority whip. You realize that it's all being done for the sake of looking good in the public eye, but they are not very grounded on the issues that are bedeviling the economy. For instance, why the CS Rotich, Honorable Kira just reminded me that's not honorable, the CS Rotich is pushing for that taxation is basically because they need to cushion and make sure that they're getting the 150 billion shillings to be able to cushion, you know, the country on the foreign exchange reserves because we'll be in bigger trouble. And this conversation is where Parliament should, you know, be focusing, because the government has failed continuously on the four key areas of managing this economy, and I've mentioned them. The issue of managing budget deficit, the issues of revenue collection, the issues of reducing borrowing, and the issues of managing recurrent vis-a-vis development expenditure. And this is where we want our legislature to focus on not just telling us that budget is a tool of the executive, when we know very well that all of us are subscribing to the motherboard law, which is the Constitution, and that the legislature has a clear role in terms of budget preparation.
Yes. Even for the MPs, you want to tell me that they do not understand that postponement is simply postponing, procrastination, that this problem, even if we do not handle it now, 2 years down the line, it will still be the same?
Well, I think it is a panacea that is achieving some short-term results. But remember, we are talking of the Constitution. Remember President Kibaki, in his term, 8 years, he led this country under the old Constitution, the same Moi Constitution that Moi had used for 24 years. But there was a lot of evidence of free space, including the issue of airwaves, including this station, that had been almost bottled up for many years until there was a new regime that said airwaves must be free. Kenyans must feel free. So it is not even the Constitution. The Constitution is as good as those implementing it. So members of parliament, I think, are in a catch-22 situation. They are dealing with an executive that has already got an extension in parliament. I see Duale, as I've said before, is more of a whip than a leader of majority. Therefore, he has to listen. In fact, I think the leader of government business is the deputy president in terms of what goes on in parliament.
He's the one who's determining.
Yeah, he determines, because at times budgets are passed. But before a project is implemented, they have to do clearing house. This project goes on, this one does not go on. And yet, parliament passed the budget.
Wow.
So it is not really, at times some of these things, we are dealing with the issues on the surface, but the depth of it is that the administration of Jubilee has failed Kenyans in terms of leadership.
And the responsibility to have the executive in check is the legislatures. They have not then done their oversight work very well. And that is why, as much as I am convinced by the argument by the Honorable Kira,
they allowed the executive to take over parliamentary work.
Definitely, it's actually an extension. It's a servant quarter of the executive. And this is what Kenyans, we cannot be able just to sit back and say, you guys, we understand you are not able to do your job. I think, Fred, if you told that your bosses that you are unable to do your work, you'll definitely be in trouble.
We have a total of 345 members of the National Assembly, 67 senators. I think we are more represented than ever before. But I think I agree with your description of what the parliament is right now, a servant's quarter to the executive.
Not exactly, and I also want to make a rectification on something you said. It is not the minority whip. You know, that's Honorable Jeanette. What has happened is the role of leader of majority in the House is now like what was, government, the leader of government business in the House is now the leader of majority. Now the leader of majority, as the Honorable Kira says, it's like now a whip for...
I feel I meant leader of my majority.
Yeah, leader of majority is now a whip, it's like a whip for the government in the House. And you can see a lot of matters are determined by the way the leader of majority whips the House. Now we have even a more complicated situation whereby we have the handshake. Such that now in the House, the effects of the handshake are felt there.
So the minority leader
so that if the minority leader and majority leader work together, it's like one is a deputy of the other. If they work together on a certain matter or agree on a certain matter, it gives the House a different direction. And therefore, there is a need for Parliament to have more of its independence, in these matters. And as I said, when it comes to budgetary issues, there is a lot of negotiation which goes on between Treasury and Parliament, because you see there are experts in Treasury on matters finance, and there are experts in Parliament. We have advisors and experts also who advise us on the budget and actually give the committees direction as to what should happen. But when it comes to the final voting, then it's a matter of numbers and how Parliament has been lobbied. And I think that's where the problem is. Clearly, what has happened now, the law has been broken. And I want to agree with the High Court in Bungoma. The law has been broken. we must repair that, and we must make sure that the law is followed. We have very good laws, but the executive must also be willing to negotiate and to be advised so that everything is done to the best interest of the country.
Okay, of course the effects of the fuel imposition of a 16% VAT on all petroleum products cannot be overstated. I think the discussion had gone to that level of now where do we go next? You wanted to say something?
Yes, I hear Honorable Manzo, but I'm still a little bit disturbed. Just picking it up from the High Court ruling in Bungoma, Justice Chacha had looked at the case in Nairobi as well, and I think the court seems to have different opinions. Particularly, I am not an advocate, but particularly on the issue of whether a court can make a decision on a law that has not yet been assented to is something that I think needs to be looked into. But the point I wanted to make was the way the Building Bridges initiative and AKA the handshake is being looked at in the context of Honorable Manzo is actually the opposition or the minority abdicating its duty on the floor of the House. And I think the spirit of the handshake, from where we understand it as common Kenyans, is for bipartisanship. And I think the minority in Parliament is not going to be telling us, using the excuse of the handshake, to abdicate their duty. It is just to be able to work on the common interests for Kenya that are beneficial to Kenyans, and not just telling us that, we have become one and the same, and therefore we cannot be able to decide these issues appropriately. We need to look at these things in the context of bipartisanship. What is the good? What is in the common good of Kenyans? And not just say, now that Honorable Raila Odinga and His Excellency the President had some, popular handshake, and therefore we will just close our eyes on some issues and assume that we're working together regardless of the effect on Kenyans.
And probably members of Parliament are suffering from a lack of clear direction. Probably members of the minority feel they do not know exactly which position they are in after that handshake. Well, as I said earlier, the effects of this fuel crisis cannot be overstated, and we're trying to look at ways that we can get out of this quagmire, this crisis that we find ourselves in. The kind of proposals we're seeing so far: reduce VAT to 12%, probably do away with some of the things that are burdening the budget, including free services, free maternal health care, free primary and secondary education. Should that be the route that we take? That is what the news tells us today. I want us to move to a final headline, and this we'll just look at it briefly as we wrap up our news review this morning. And this is what transpired yesterday at the County Assembly of Nairobi. Nairobi County Assembly Speaker Beatrice Salachi was yesterday impeached by a majority of members of the County Assembly. 103 members voted for the impeachment. Only 2 voted against it. That is unanimous. That is overwhelming because there are only 122 members to that House. There are issues about the procedure because they even had to amend a few standing orders for this process to actually be able to conclude in a day. Beatrice Salachi moved to court and obtained temporary orders to suspend that impeachment until Tuesday next week, when that matter will be heard and determined. But a lot must be said about what happens at the county level. The reasons they're even giving for this impeachment, including the fact that some of them feel that she has been denying them the opportunity to travel on trips. What do you think could be happening to the Speaker of the County Assembly of Nairobi?
Well, quite unfortunate for my very good friend, the Honorable Lachi. And, she must take this very seriously. The courts may give her temporary relief, but it means she's got a lot of business to do with our members. A speaker is elected by members, and similarly members can impeach a speaker. So that process has a legal mechanism. But whether there is law or no law, it's clearly that now she's very unpopular with the members of our assembly. And I don't think it's simply for trips and things like that.
Yes.
This is administration, and the cooperation between the speaker, the assembly, and the governor is very important, so that you all work as a team. The moment there's no teamwork, you begin getting this sort of thing. even if the courts bring her back, the assembly is going to follow the process and vote her, vote again. So how she needs to do a lot of work with the assembly. Obviously, if it was 50-50 or 40-60, there will be some hope. But the way things look, she's got a lot to do, and she may have been assisted. She may be assisted a lot by the parties. She must now negotiate with the two sides of the handshake, because these are the majority in that particular house. And well, I'm wishing her well, and but the position of the assembly must remain. And this is similar to any other assembly, including the National Assembly, including the Senate. Really, if you're not supported very much by your executive and the members, then you're in a lot of trouble.
Wow. A lot can be said about any person in a position of leadership in such an institution. We saw what happened to Moses Wetangula when, and his position as leader of minority in the Senate. When you fail to marshal enough support, when you fail to gel with the people you're leading, do you think this is the same thing that is happening to Beatrice Elachi?
I think so, and I agree with Honorable Manso that Honorable Beatrice Elachi should not over-rely on the courts. She's depleted her political capital, and I think she should pick up, dust it up, her contact book, and make sure that she's quickly looking for another job, because the vote was just very, very, very clear. And perhaps if she wants,
see any hope for her?
Yes, if she wants to go for another political job, I think then she should go back to the basics of politics. All politics is local, and it's about personal relationships. And she's lost those two. Even regardless of just looking at the accusations, which we will discuss fairly, and they will be discussed fairly in other platforms, but just in terms of doing politics, she's failed herself, and she should basically look for another job.
Because it may not really have anything to do with the kind of accusations leveled against her. It's just simply down to politics, how you relate with those MCAs.
Well, I think it's personal relations. I think she should have improved her PR. But as the other panelists have said, I think our deal, our fate has been sealed.
No hope.
No hope. What she should do is how to exit. She should look for a good exit strategy, make peace with them. Because the core constituency of any speaker is the electorate are the leaders in the assembly or national assembly or in the Senate.
Yes.
Members of parliament, senators or MCAs. She lost her constituency, and when you lose your constituency in such an extent, you have lost everything.
Wow.
So what she needs to do is just to go home, join the rest of us in society and serve the nation.
Spruce up her CV for the next offers available.
Yeah, she's a good ambassador.
If at all I was hoping, if at all I was hoping for any hope for Beatrice Elachi, there's none from this panelist. It should be noted that the 102 members came from both sides of the political divide.
Yeah.
There was even an attempt by, according to one of the stories, that there was even an attempt by the leader of NASA, of ODM, Raila Odinga, to actually try and marshal support from the ODM members of that county assembly to postpone that motion, but that did not happen. They defied even the party position and decided to unite with the other colleagues.
A critical player in city politics is Sonko. She should have listened to Sonko from the beginning.
You feel the governor would have said that?
The governor, is part and parcel of the leadership and the social fabric of this city. You cannot deal with Sonko in Nairobi without dealing with Sonko.
But a lot can be said about these county assemblies. We've seen even in Makueni, the county assembly had a problem with the governor, and you saw how problematic that became. Don't you think that probably we're looking at a rogue county assembly?
Right now, the situation in Makueni is very different, and during those days, the assembly attempted to impeach the governor, and of course the matter ended up in court and back to the people. Right now, the Speaker of Makueni is quite in charge, because he also got political goodwill from the party. So you must have political goodwill from the two parties. In the case of Elachi, Jubilee and NASA must support her in the House, and they're almost in 50-50. If those two parties don't support her, she's in a lot of trouble.
For example, and we're talking about the personal relationships and the approach that you have. Do you think, for example, that Governor Kivutha Kibwana, Professor, changed his approach in the way he deals with the MCAs, the County Assembly? He was in real trouble back then. Right now, he appears to be in a much better position. What changed? Governor
Kibwana remained steadfast in what he stood for. And he said that if what I stand for, if it doesn't work for me, then I'm ready, you know, to listen to the people. I'll listen to the people. And you see the people stuck with the Governor Kibwana, and it is the MCAs who lost. In fact, only one MCA came back. You know, he's from my constituency. He's the only one who came back. And the rest of the 29 MCAs who are sent off, meaning the people who are not with the MCAs. In this case, you know, the constituency of Elachi is the MCAs themselves. Yeah, and any speaker who loses his constituency or her constituency will go home. Okay. So she must regain her constituency, even if she's assisted by both the president and the NASA leader Raila Odinga. She must make peace with the members themselves.
Do you think there's still hope for her?
Well, if she negotiated politically, and she must really also consult quite constantly with the governor, because in the social fabric, you know, the governor of Nairobi works very well with the rest of the leaders, and she could have been the problem in a lot of other things. You know, for you to manage this city, you need to work with the assembly as a governor. You need a lot of things going very well for you. In the assembly, and if the speaker is a problem, definitely the members of the assembly will sack her.
Okay. Well, we've come to the end of our news review. Our time is up, but I'll start from you. Yes. Final comments so that we can just go this one direction.
Yes, I really want to wish the country well when it comes to the deliberations on the 16% VAT tax on fuel products. And also say that, you know, dialogue is important. We need to look for solutions. And I believe if Kenyans work together, you know, the executive consults with the parliament, we're likely to get a good, something good for the country. We want the country to be happy. We want the country to win. We want the country to succeed. And therefore, open-mindedness in this negotiation is very important.
Okay. Thank you. The Honorable Manzo.
Yeah, pretty obviously our economy is in distress, and the executive should pull up their socks from the anklets and make sure that they are, you know, developing some serious austerity measures to shore up our economy, make sure that even the big four, we're walking the talk, and Kenyans are able to live within their means because the government is doing so. An overtaxed population cannot be supportive of economic development, and I think it behooves the National Assembly particularly to look at the role of the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary and his contributions to the failings of the economy, and possibly Habakam Kunji with His Excellency the President, and if they deem so fit, live in the spirit of the handshake and include Honorable Raila Odinga, so that we can have a solution to these bedeviling economic challenges. Otherwise, when the rubber meets the road, because for the last few days it's been the middle class unable to find fuel for the little money they have for their guzzlers. But when the people of Kawangware, the people of Kibera, Mathare cannot be able to grind their maize for a proper portion of their ugali because the cost of diesel has gone up, the leadership will be in trouble, including Honorable Manzo, when his people cannot deal with Mthokoi in coming days.
Finally,
I request the President to do two things. One is to have national dialogue, the way my colleagues have said, and readjust the agenda that he has for Kenya. He should not be embarrassed to say we cannot achieve all the four. We can achieve 1, 2, 3. The rest, let us deal with the issue of corruption. Number two, I want Treasury to do an audit of all the pending bills, because there are many contractors, there are many suppliers to government, to county government. And if they released, because it is almost about it is about 500 billion that is pending almost all over the country. In counties alone is about 100 million. If that money is released, starting with the 3 billion that is owed to farmers, if that money is released, it will be an economic stimulus that may actually allow this economy to grow. But you are holding people, you've taken away their money. For example, Fred, I do a project of 10 million. I go to the bank, I borrow 8 million. After 3 years, 8 million has gone to 13 million. Already I'm owing the bank, and I'm owing you, and the money that I'm owing you, I have no capacity to improve it from 10 million to 13 million to cover for the loss that has been occasioned by the delay in payment. It is unfortunate, and we are killing our own economy.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kipruto Rapkirwa, Deputy Party Leader, ANC, Franklin Mukwanja, Executive Director, Center for Multi-Party Democracy, and Dan Manzo, MP Makueni, our panelists this morning for the news review, looking at the issues behind the headlines. Thank you so much for your very well-considered opinions and your time on this panel. Daybreak still continues. Time now for a traffic update. Our man on the roads, Kimani Mbogwa, I do understand he is within the city center, and apparently filling stations are still experiencing a shortage of the commodity. I understand only one fueling station in the city center has fuel. Kimani, how is the situation?
Good morning, Fred. We are in the CBD. This is Haile Selassie Avenue, and we just came out of this national oil station, which they say they have fuel, but they're also not very sure how long that is going to last them. And it's a different situation from yesterday, where we are at a different petrol station at Astral, that's on Lenana Road, where they said they had a limit for how much you can fuel at that station. For them, they had put it at 500 shillings. These guys don't have a limit, so you can come and fill up your tank here and leave, but then they don't know how long that is going to last. They don't know just how long they're going to have that fuel. And from most of the stations we've come through, we've come from Shell, GPO, they have run out of everything, diesel, V-Power, everything. They've run out of all the fuel. Also, there's a Total at Jamia Mall. That's still in the CBD. They also say they have run out of fuel, and they also don't know when they're going to get the next supply because of the independent suppliers of oil who have kind of brought a commotion, to push government to reduce the VAT tax or to remove it altogether. And also another one that we have an update right now that has fuel, it is Shell in Bagathi. Now the Shell at Bagathi has fuel, and we also had to let our driver go and also fuel there. So if you need fuel and you live around Langata and Bagathi, you can go and fuel at the Shell around Bagathi. But for now, the CBD, which has 4 major filling stations, that's Shell at GPO, the Total at Jamia Mall, and also this National Oil behind us, which has oil. And there's also a Shell right at the edge of Haile Selassie Avenue at the roundabout there with Upper Hill Road. That we're not sure whether they have, or we haven't gotten a chance to go there, but we'll give you an update about that. But it seems like most of the stations are not sure. Now, this is what is causing confusion in most stations. They also don't know how long it's going to take for them to get their next supply, which is confusing even the consumers. And there's an update on social media, hashtag fuel shortage, which is going on, and people are updating which stations have fuel. And by yesterday, very few stations actually had fuel, and we've seen the same situation now. And what is amazing is that despite the fuel shortage, we still have a traffic situation. Like, we've come from Thika Road, which is, there's heavy traffic between the Pangani stretch and also the Utalii College. That stretch usually has traffic in the morning, and it still has traffic. So it means like most Kenyans had fueled the cars before the shortage came into full effect. And yesterday, a High Court in Bungoma gave temporary orders to stop the VAT implementation. But we're not sure how long that is going to go. The case is going to be had on September 12th. And the group of lobbyists in Bungoma who filed that case are now supposed to serve the Treasury, which is right next to us, and also the ARC, to see whether that is going to be effected. We're not sure how that is going to go, but we definitely keep tabs with that and see how that is going to go. The case is supposed to be had in about a week's time, and but for now, the situation that we have in the CBD, most stations have run out of fuel, and most motorists don't know how to, most of them are not aware of where to fuel their cars. But you can go to social media, the hashtag fuel shortage. You can see the stations which you can fuel at, and we'll also be updating you with the stations we go at. For now, most stations have run out. National Oil here at CBD has fuel. Also, the one that we can confirm is Shell Bagathi has fuel, so you might expect a queue there, so you might want to rush there for now. That is the update we have from the ground, Fred.
Well, thank you, Kimani, for that update from the CBD with regard to the prevailing situation with the availability or lack of fuel at filling stations. And yes, as he shared, about 1 or 2 filling stations in the city center are the only ones with fuel. The rest are not serving any motorists. And yes, I'm just trying to look at that hashtag fuel shortage. And yes, indeed, motorists are sharing different places where there's fuel, different filling stations, and probably you can go online and check that hashtag if at all you're looking for a fuel station where you can actually fill up your gas tank. Let's now take a break. When we come back, do stand by Fashion Friday plus DJ Roy Tibo to level up your Fridays.